Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm not going to be reviewing a movie, and I'm not going to be reviewing a video game, but instead I'm going to be reviewing a comic book released in June 2008. This is a Friday the 13th one-shot called Abuser and the Abused, distributed by Wildstorm, and written and illustrated by Fialkov and Andy B. Just to preface this, I am in no way an art expert. I'm not even that good at drawing, so, this is just my personal opinion. So I hope you guys enjoy this review. But, when this came out in 2008, I was like 11 years old. This is one of the first like hard R comics I ever had in my collection. Actually, that's a lie. I had a bunch of Punisher Max issues growing up, but this was the first like slasher movie comic I ever got. And around 2008, there was a lot of these coming out. There was like Friday the 13th, Jason versus Jason X. There was Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Chucky, Jeepers Creepers. I think Reanimator even had one. But there was a lot of horror movie comics coming out, and it was a really, really cool time. And I'm kind of bummed out it doesn't really happen that much anymore. Like, you get a couple Evil Dead comics here and there, which is pretty cool, but man, there was a lot of cool ones coming out, and a lot of them are pretty hard to find now. So, if you guys have a chance to find some of these kind of things, I highly recommend you check them out. They're really cool. Friday the 13th is a series I've dunked on quite a bit in previous videos. It's a series where the ones I do like, I really do like, but the rest of them I can kind of do without. I'm not a huge fan of the series compared to something like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Nightmare on Elm Street or even fucking Halloween, even though the later ones get kind of shitty. But Friday the 13th is one where I wasn't really a big fan. I mean, I like I like Jason, I like the kills in it, but like the movies itself, I'm not a huge fan of. I think they're kind of boring, and like I said, there's a lot of shitty ones. Some of the shitty ones can be really good. Like Jason X is one of my favorite ones, and that's one of the worst ones in the series. But it's something that I'm not a huge fan of the movies, but the comic books I am a huge fan of. It's kind of like with Alien. Not in the sense that I don't like the Alien movies. I pretty much like all of them. Prometheus is awesome too, by the way. But anyway, like Alien has a bunch of comic books that take place, like their own one-shots or self-contained stories, and they're all really fucking good in my opinion. Friday the 13th is the same. Like, I personally like the comics for Friday the 13th a lot more than I like the movies. Abuser and the Abused is an example of that. It is so fucking crazy. It's a fairly short read too. Like, you can probably get through it in under 10 minutes, but the artwork is just so fucking good. Like, it literally looks like an old school horror, like EC type comic, but just pushed to the fucking max. And it's basically about this like goth emo chick, Maggie, and she's being abused by her like jock piece of shit boyfriend and her fucking stepmom and her fucking dad. So, she's getting bullied at school for coming in with a shiner and shit, and she just like hates the world and hates everyone, like rightfully so. Like, everyone in Crystal Lake seems to be a piece of shit. And so one night she basically has had enough, and she kills both of her parents, and then she lures her boyfriend, I think Steve was his name, out with the promise of fucking him, and they go to Camp Blood. And right as he's about to go, she fucking shivs the shit out of him. And I think she's kind of hoping that Jason will show up, or that she can kill this guy and use the legend of Jason to get away with it. Jason does show up inevitably, and he chops the shit out of this guy. She flips out, because kind of like Freddy and Freddy versus Jason with the "no, she's mine," but like pretty much this way, because I mean, and rightfully so, she should have killed this guy. He was a piece of shit, but Jason swoops in, steals the kill. This results into a fucking brawl between the big titty goth chick and Jason. Wild shit. Cars get flipped, people get cut up, and basically she confides in Jason at a moment where the fight calms down that, like him, she can relate because her mother died, and after that happened, everyone started going after her. It's kind of like a reverse thing, but it's the idea that like everyone that went after Jason's mom, Jason ended up killing them. So there's a commonality between the two of them. But, Jason being Jason, he lifts his machete and he fucking decapitates her and drags her back into the lake. Like I said, a very short story, but, it was cool. Like, it kind of broke the formula of the other Friday the 13th. I mean, only 3 or 4 people die in this, but it was brutal. The subject matter, too, was like... It's crazy saying this. The subject matter was deeper than any of the other Friday the 13th in the sense that you had more complex characters, like a really like serious situation, domestic violence, like it's a dark comic, and it's like tonally darker than some of the other movies in my personal opinion. And there's a couple other cool Friday the 13th comics. Like there's one that takes place in the winter, and it's like two stories running side by side, like one in the 1700s, I believe, when America was being colonized. There's like these fucking trappers, and they rape and kill this native woman and the baby, and then the guy comes back, catches a musket blast in the face, and then he comes back on a vengeance spree and kills everyone. This happens to be on Crystal Lake grounds. And then running parallel to that story is Jason in the winter killing people. Spoiled that one. I want to get more into that one at some point, but basically my point being that these Friday the 13th comics had some really great stories, and in a lot of cases the stories in these comics were way, way, way better than the movies that came out. I'm a huge fan of these. This is the one shot, but it's also in a collected edition by Wildstorm called Friday the 13th Book 2. It has that story about the Native American Jason type killer. It also has a story about Pamela Voorhees and what it was like when she was pregnant with Jason, and what it was like in the first few years of his life leading up to his death. I think it's actually supposed to be taking place during the first Friday the 13th, when the first girl gets picked up in the Jeep, and it's the story she's telling her before she kills her. Really cool shit. And then there's another story about this kid with like a bone disorder who's kind of like Jason at a summer camp, and they basically have a buddy vacation killing all the bullies and shitty people, and on their pursuit is like a meth smoking cop. Really crazy shit. Like honestly, really fucking crazy. There's a series called Jason versus Jason X that I mentioned. I've always wanted to get those. Again, I didn't get them at the time because, I was like a young kid. You only have so much like pocket change on you, and sneaking these through my fucking house. Like my dad didn't really give a shit, but if my mom caught this comic, she would have fucking flipped. Like it like, I don't know. It's really fucking violent, but it's cool shit. If you're a fan of like old school, like I said, EC type Tales from the Crypt, like pulpy looking retro horror comics, this one is amazing. I can't recommend it enough. The artwork is just phenomenal. I always really love that old school deteriorated 50s or 70s looking comic books. It's so fucking awesome. There's also a lot of nostalgia to be had with this single issue. Like there's fucking ads for Ninja Gaiden 2. There's advertisements for Diary of the Dead by Dimension Extreme, and the re-release of George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. So you got some cool horror movie adverts in this comic book. And, I just breezed through it and read it before this review just to like touch up on it. And it was like a trip down memory lane. It was really fun, really nostalgic. Again, breezed through it really quickly. I don't know how much it's going for online, and I honestly don't know the sums or values of comic books that well. I kind of just get them and read them. So this one, if it goes for a lot, I don't know if it's worth it or not. But to me, this is something that is always going to hold a special place in my collection. And hopefully, if you guys like this review, I'll cover more comics. I think I have a couple Friday the 13th ones. I know I have a bunch of Nightmare on Elm Street ones. Got Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. I think maybe a couple Halloweens. Maybe a Leatherface comic from the 90s. I'm pretty sure I got a Fright Night one that's in 3D, so that'd be sick to talk about too. Oh shit, you know what? Speaking of vampires, I totally forgot. At the end of this Friday the 13th comic, there was a special sneak preview for Lost Boys Reign of Frogs by Hans Rodenoff and Joel Gomez. And this was a 4-issue limited series that bridged the gap between the Lost Boys and the Lost Boys the Tribe. If you saw my review on Lost Boys last night, then you'll know I talked about these comic books a little bit. Fucking super cool thing to have in here. Wildstorm was fucking killing it back in the day. The poster they have to promote this is super badass. It's Edgar and Allan Frog with a fucking katana and crossbow pistol just hacking through hordes of fucking vampires. One's getting staked right in the mouth, and it says, "Before Buffy, before Blade, one name was whispered in fear and awe among the undead. Frog." Super badass shit. I think I have a couple of those issues, or maybe the graphic novel. I have to check it out. If not, I'll definitely try to pick it up and review it, because I remember that being a pretty cool series. But if you guys like this comic book review, if you want to see more of these, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You'll get more videos like this in your feed. Thanks for coming out and checking it. I'm a little fried like always. Have a good one. Peace.